As we mentioned earlier, Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is set to visit areas in the southeast hit by Helene.
Harris will visit Augusta, Georgia today to assess storm damage there. The White House says she'll also spend time in North Carolina in the coming days to survey the aftermath of Helene in that region.
Former President Donald Trump toured storm-damaged areas in Georgia earlier this week. Today, he's holding a pair of private fundraising events in Texas. And then the former president heads to Michigan for a rally on Thursday. Then he is expected to return to Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. You'll recall that was the scene of the assassination attempt back in July. And joining us here in Studio 57 are CBS News campaign reporters Jake Rosen and Aaron Navarro. You guys have been out on the campaign trail, crisscrossing the nation, and now you're here with us on set, so it's good to have you here. So, Aaron, let's go ahead and start with you as we're going through this. VP Harris talked about U.S. support for Israel yesterday in the wake of the Iran missile attack. Talk to us about what she had to say and her policies in the region.
Yeah, she made quick remarks yesterday in D.C., condemned the attacks, said Iran is, quote, a destabilizing, dangerous force. And as you said, reiterated her support for Israel and their right to defend themselves. And that's probably the most specific we've gotten in terms of the foreign policy as it relates to the Middle East. You saw in our debate last night, Tim Walz said he wants steady leadership when it comes to the Middle East and that Trump is fickle on this issue of foreign policy and that there's a focus to maintain the allies and partnerships that they have in that region.
And Jake, what have we heard from the Trump campaign about the developments in the Middle East?
Well, the argument that we heard last night from J.D. Vance and from Donald Trump yesterday was that what is going on in the Middle East wouldn't be happening under his administration. This has been the kind of line that they've used since October 7th, saying that strong leadership in America when it comes to the Middle East, not what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done, would result in a more sustained and encouraged Israel defeating anti-Semitism, as Donald Trump likes to frame it in the context of what's going on here. But then when you think about really what's going on overseas in Iran, it's Donald Trump making clear to these foreign leaders when he takes over, if he does, and again, this has been the line for about a year now, that the behavior would not be encouraged and that he would do what he did in office, which was go after these leaders, sometimes personally, to make sure that they stop what's going on.
And what's interesting about that Trump retort is the focus becomes leadership. And now with what's happening in Israel with Iran and the storm damage from Helene, Aaron, I'm wondering if the vice president is planning official campaign stops or if she's kind of focusing on her official role and really looking at the Helene aftermath, because so many people impacted by that and still suffering now and perhaps wanting to see leadership.
With this close to the election, she's going to have to juggle both. She's going to be in Augusta today. Her office has said she will go to North Carolina in the coming days. But in between, after today, she's going to do campaign stops in Michigan and Wisconsin, showing the importance of being in those battleground states. North Carolina could happen this weekend. We'll see.
And then I understand former President Trump heading to Butler, Pennsylvania. This is a crucial location because it was where someone tried to kill him. And he's had limited outdoor campaign rallies since. Jake, what do we expect from Trump in terms of security, since he wants to show a sense of strength?
Well, I'm sure that as someone who was there compared to last time, their security apparatus around that site will be far greater than it was in terms of what Secret Service is doing, protecting the rooftops that were obviously not protected on July 13th. But the Trump campaign has said repeatedly that they see this as a massive rally, potentially one of their biggest of the cycle, bringing people from not just Pennsylvania, but supporters from all around the country to come and celebrate Donald Trump, A, coming out of that alive, but B, the resiliency and the fighting that they've continued to do since then, making it clear, again, after the second assassination attempt now, that Donald Trump will continue to fight for the American people. We'll see. He said he would also honor Corey Convertore, who was killed, and the two other people who were injured that day. We'll see exactly what that looks like on Saturday.
Well, a big appreciation to you both for being here in set. That's the benefit of the debate. Got to see you guys, the Jake and Aaron show on the road. Or Aaron and Jake, whoever gets top first. Great to see you both, guys. Thanks so much.